with that, I guess I should also add that the cost for doing the road improvements to bring the whole thing up to county standards would probably be cost prohibitive and kill the project. So staff believes that we found a middle ground. One of the applicants wishes to have that, at least a portion of that middle ground, taken away by allowing the ability to have a second unit on the larger remainder parcel. With that, I'll try to respond to your questions.
Questions of Mr. Lynch from the board. Supervisor Delmer.
Thank you. So the second unit is only proposed on the 100-acre.
That is the one, Ms. Urkula, who will be the recipient of that 100-acre parcel. She is the one who filed the appeal.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions from the board? Okay. Well, then let's go to the appellant, and you have 20 minutes for your presentation.
Hi, my name is Chris Urkula. It sounds pretty glum, but I'm still going to try. What I'm going to do, I appealed this at the Planning Commission, and I think I did a really poor job at presenting it, so I'm going to try to do a little better today. I've been told I should cry, but I'm not really a crier, so I think I won't do that. First, what I'm going to do is, I think I made the assumption everybody read the 2-page letter that I wrote, and this is the same thing that I did at the Planning Commission, but I'm just going to read it in case you didn't. This is a request to allow 2 instead of 1 single-family residential structures on the 100-acre remainder parcel for the subdivision. I'm just going to read what I wrote in the letter here. It said, I am owner of the property involved in MS 6.2002, and there's a use management number 2. My late husband, Glenn Rogers, began this subdivision in 2002 in order to both help his son, Mark Rogers, who's in the audience here, with his first house, and to help his wife, that would be me, with retirement income or capital. That was his intent. Originally, the subdivision was four parcel minor subdivision, and that's been described. Glenn Rogers and Mark Rogers entered into a verbal agreement that Mark would eventually own parcel 1 in the current nomenclature. That's a 20-acre parcel. In place on parcel 1 was and one of the reasons I'm saying this, I don't want you to think that I was a gold digger here. I mean, I put money into this, and that's the only intention for some of this. In place on parcel 1 was a foundation, septic system, driveway and cat work, spring and house plants. In 1997, I bought $10,000 worth of building materials for Mark Rogers' house. Now, Glenn didn't have any capital. He had very little income even at that point. Mark and his father, Glenn, built his house over a 2-year period using these materials and Mark's own money, a significant amount of his own money too. He lived on the property in a trailer with no rent while they were doing the building. In 1999, Mark moved into his house and began paying monies to his father, Glenn, for what was structured as a mortgage, even though it's really not, some property taxes, and Vista del Lago Road maintenance fees. The agreed upon price was around $70,000, approximately 50% of the market value at that time, and that's per John Prince, who was the realtor that Glenn was involved with. The remainder parcel is where Glenn Rogers and I lived until his death in 2004, and I still live there and intend to live there as long as I'm about 60, getting to be 60, so as long as I can. Glenn intended the other 2 parcels to be used as retirement income or capital for me. He applied for the minor subdivision in 2002, and the minor subdivision immediately hit a snag due to a right-of-way on Elledge Ranch Road. He had basically given the right-of-way to Bob Gustafson, who did the subdivision for the other parcels on Elledge Ranch Road. There are 5 houses on Elledge Ranch Road. And it was never deeded back to him. So we did a lawsuit. Took about 3 years and $20,000 later, which I paid for, to try to get some sort of right-of-way in Elledge Ranch Road. A couple of the parcels there wanted big-time money for the right-of-way. So I paid for the lawsuit, then began a year-long negotiation with the Department of Transportation to enable a replacement house to be built on the remainder parcel without Elledge Ranch Road improvements. I have a 700 square foot house there. It's like a cabin. It started as a shop and turned into a house. It's not big. It's 1 bedroom. And that's fine for me. But the area is fairly large houses, and I don't think that would be fine for whoever might eventually buy the property some years down the road. So this was negotiated on my behalf by Ron Prince, and it went well, I must admit. In 2006, Mark then sued me for a breach of contract over the subdivision. And after a year of negotiation through lawyers and a mediation settlement, I basically dropped the potential income capital generating parcels out of the subdivision. And this was to more easily get the subdivision through the county subdivision process. And as it sits right now, Mark was to pay for most of the subdivision expenses, as it now benefits only him. It doesn't benefit me at this point. In addition to the above-mentioned payments, over the years, I've put large sums of money into the property to try to keep it viable. 4 years of back property taxes when I first got involved with Glenn, ongoing taxes, payoff of Glenn's ex-wife 50% of the value of the property. In fact, my current mortgage on my on the property is paying a lot of that back. And so, for 2 reasons, would I like to see the 2 residential units. One is to hold the resale value of the property. I talked to Gary Nix a week or 2 ago, and he did say that it had some effect on the retail value of the property if I was to ever sell it in the future. And he also said it had an even bigger impact on who would maybe buy it if you couldn't put two residential units on such a large piece of property. However, I do have no particular plans at this point. I don't think I'm going to sell it as long as I'm physically able to stay. I also have only one close relative, my sister. She lives in Nevada. We have no children, we have no parents, and she has cancer. She got diagnosed about 6 or 8 weeks ago. In fact, I'm leaving tomorrow morning to go visit her, and it's pretty serious. I don't know if she'll live or if she won't live, but if she does and needs to be taken care of, I'm the most obvious and only person that I think would probably be willing to take her in. Let me just do a few other comments. I believe the letter said that the reason I dropped the 2 other parcels out of the subdivision was because I couldn't afford to do the development. And I didn't realize that what you meant by it was the whole road network. I thought you meant I wasn't going to be able to do perks and septic systems and a certain amount of paving. And I, in fact, could have done that. But I felt myself in a bind between the planning and building, and probably the planning commission, as they warned me, was not going to allow additional subdivisions, especially a 4-parcel subdivision. And the lawsuit with Mark, who said basically it was a breach of contract, we've got to get this thing subdivided. So I thought I took the high road because I did promise his father and my husband that I would not basically, I think I used the word screw Mark or try to screw Mark, so I'm not trying to do that. I promised him that. The other option would have been for me to buy Mark's house, not the property, but his house. And I was just more concerned. I only had about $300,000 that I could get my hands on, although they're in an annuity for when I retire. I just thought it might go higher than that. And so I was sort of in a bind between planning and the suit that I was in. I was there. So I came up with the idea of dropping the 2 other divisions. I want to point out, I think, as was asked by Mike, is that it's a 100-acre parcel size. I'm not talking about a 20-acre or 40-acre. We're talking about a 100-acre. And I think it might be bigger than other parcels that were limited to 1 residential unit. I think